Republican Party has to do more outreach to Muslims. I say this as a Jewish American, that it's important to try to reach out to as many different voters as possible, to try to bring more people into voting Republican and supporting the America First agenda. And many people assume, because there are certain elements which people, now they'll call them Islamists, who push to have political rule in places that are not majority Muslim, to have the Islamic law. And so you have this boogeyman of this threat of Sharia law, whereas the word Sharia in Arabic and in Islam refers to really any religion. The word Sharia equally in Arabic applies to Christianity and Judaism as well. According to the teachings of Islam, so there's one deen, one general law for all of humanity, and a separate Sharia for each ummah, for each religious community. It's interesting that word ummah is the cognate of the Hebrew word am, which is usually translated today as people or nation, but it really has nothing to do with the sense of what we understand today of nationalism, but rather, as it does in Islam, Am Yisrael is a term referring to
in a quarter mile, turn left onto Pennsylvania 590 West per D-Town Turnpike.
As a religious community, not as anything nationalistic or in the secular 1890s nationalism sense.
At the light, turn left onto Pennsylvania 590 West per D-Town Turnpike.
The point that I'm bringing out here, though, is that we have had success in America and in the MAGA agenda because of help from Muslims. There was recently a case that
continue on Pennsylvania 590 West for 3/4 of a mile.
Just a few months ago, or a month ago, about Mahmoud v. Taylor. In this case, the main plaintiffs were Muslim families who were seeking to protect their children from indoctrination into left-wing ideologies that run counter to the religious sentiments of Muslims, as well as most religious and Orthodox Jews. And so all of these different religions, we have much in common one to another. And so we should be able, even though obviously we have things we disagree about, Christianity and
in a quarter mile, turn right onto Owego Turnpike.
Then Judaism and Islam have, and then the other ones, they have different ideas of different who their prophets and who their saints are, etc., etc. But that doesn't mean, this is not where we're supposed to turn. Really not a good place to turn. All right, I thought this was Owego Turnpike.
In 1,000 feet, turn right onto Pennsylvania 590 West per D-Town Turnpike.
The point that I'm bringing about here is that we see they had this thing that was successful in the Supreme Court to protect religious freedom that mostly helps Christians. And who was it who brought the lawsuit? They were Muslims. Christians also joined in, but the main litigants, the main plaintiffs were Muslims. And the point that I want to say, why I'm bringing that up, is that this is the way that
In 600 feet, turn right onto Owego Turnpike.
there are many things, again, that
Continue on Owego Turnpike for 14 miles.
And how do we say, the strange phenomenon that so many people who identify as Muslims are Democrats. That makes no sense. Runs counter to, we'll say, little o Orthodox Christianity, which would include big O Orthodox Christianity. Runs against the ideology of Orthodox Judaism and of pretty much any form of Islam that I'm aware of. I've heard of such a thing that there's someone somewhere, the Masjid for Progressive Values, something. I think there's a very, very small minority in Islamic circles. And I have a question: how is it that these people who identify as Muslims, perhaps culturally, much how many Jews and Catholics and so forth identify culturally as a with the Democrat Party, and I don't understand how this Mamdani, right? Mamdani. He's running for the mayor of New York City, and he's a communist. Communism is an evil atheist ideology that has destroyed more lives than Nazism, and they're both forms of socialism. There's just the difference between the National Socialism and the International Socialism, not that much of a difference as far as they're both murderous, evil ideologies. I guess the main difference would be the communists totally reject religion, whereas the Nazis, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram, twist religion. What they had under Nazism, they had what they called responsibility, and that was the ideology of how the Nazis perverted the church. Yimach Shemam V'Zichram, may their memory be erased forever. However, we see here this other idea of this question that I have. I don't understand. How is it that someone like Mamdani or the other one, Omar, right, and Rashida Tlaib. So Ilhan Omar, she wears even the hijab. She presents herself as a pious, religious Muslimah, and yet she pushes these communist ideas. Rashida Tlaib is not so religious. She doesn't cover her hair. She does, But also, where are all these people falling into the Democrat Party? Makes no sense. People who hate the religious values that are important to Muslims. And so my theory is either they're lying about one or the other. That's neither here nor there. The vast majority of American Muslims are religious people who love their religion and love their culture, but are not extremists and to live be able to keep their religion, but have religious freedom and have general American freedom and the opportunities that America presents. And yet, many of them vote Democrat simply because of this perception of bigotry on the side of the Republican Party. Now, to his credit, President Trump has made tremendous inroads to try to reach out to the Muslim communities in America. I would encourage anybody who's curious about this to watch it. It's available on YouTube, Twitter, everywhere else. There are videos of President Trump speaking at an iftar event that took Ramadan, and iftar means it's finishing something. So the end, it means, and the term is used for the breaking of the fast during Ramadan. So So that's so the is this working? There we go. So anyway, in this event President Trump had, which was very interesting, he said to the Muslim Americans who were present there, he said, "I love you." And he said, I had a lot of false ideas about your religion. People, I thought, you didn't care about life. They said, no, we want to live, we want peace. And he realized that he turned to, what's the woman's name, who's the faith advisor, Paula White. And he says, I know you might not like what I'm doing, but this is part of your job, because the religious freedom is for all Americans. So President Trump, being a boy from Queens, which is the most diverse entire United States of America, I mean, not only in America, in the world, the borough of Queens is the most diverse place in the entire world. So he's a man who understands diversity and celebrates diversity without this equity nonsense. That's really the only problem, but he supports diversity and inclusion, which is demonstrates with an event like that, with the hosting. If it said that Christians should not see this as a threat, but not see this as a threat, but rather see it as an opportunity. There are certain families who are complaining that Muslim children are allowed to gather during Ramadan for prayer while in the public school building. And why don't Christians do that? So the answer is, well, if the Christian students gather around and say they want to do it, so they could do it. Many states have release time where you can go have religious instruction. Even New York State has that. So, and that's equally for all the religions. Now you have certain groups who are gadflies, like Satanic Temple, others, who are just trying to shut all that down. They don't really have any plans. They just want to get rid of religious expression in the public square for the most part. And so they'll say, if you don't have our clubs, and you don't have our statues and so forth in places where other religions have, then you have to take those down. And in general, I think it was the 700 Club even, that said, when it comes to those groups, just give it to them, because and grassroots level oppose them, but and it depends again in each country how it works. So in Russia they don't really have religious freedom. They have, I saw someone who I was recently on the podcast was Father Calvin Robinson. He said, religious freedom doesn't extend, to the Satanists. And he's like very proud. Look, Russia, they banned these groups as extremists. What they don't know is that the Russians also banned Jehovah's Witnesses. I believe perhaps Mormons also. And so they don't really have religious freedom in Russia. And they actually persecute the Jehovah's Witnesses pretty bad in Russia. That's not someone we should be wanting to emulate. And that would ban Jehovah's Witnesses, would ban certain other religious communities. So, with all that being said, there has to be more efforts made by Republicans to go and spend time reach out, do outreach, and learn about Islamic communities. How they are really a different type. Just they're really not that different than us. Are there extremists? Yes, but there are extremists in other religions as well. Perhaps there are more extremists per capita that are dangerous within Islamic communities. Yes, that is true. But the vast majority of the Islamic world pose no threat to anybody. Certainly in America. Certainly the American Muslims. I think even Ben Shapiro, he made a statistical analysis of various Islamic communities throughout the world and their levels of extremism and so forth are among the moderate. And so for that reason, I think we should, again, make this effort, but also not to try to exclude people, not to try to insult people, but also to support, as much as possible, because if we don't do it, the Democrats are going to get those votes. And we can't afford to lose votes to Democrats, particularly when we're talking about people who have and the similarities and so forth, and be able to live together in peace. And that's one thing I find with my ministry and prison ministry, is that I get to see that how a diverse religious community works, where you have many different types of religions, sometimes radically different, who all can gather together and have a sense of unity, even though we agree to disagree. So, what are your thoughts on this? Please let me know in the comments below or in the chat before I'm about to conclude this live stream. And I apologize that I'm a little distracted, being that I'm driving. Can this move? How does that move? All right. Let's see. Just don't want that in my face. This sticker thing. What is it? I don't want to end the QA. I just don't want it in my face. All right. So, any comments, any questions, anything else we'd like to, for the good of the order, before we conclude the live stream? I guess we'll conclude the Q&A. Well, we thank you all for watching, and please, if you haven't, check out. I know some of the folks here have watched our videos, and I appreciate that. We're trying to help this channel grow, and I appreciate each and every one of the viewers. Keep up the good work, and keep supporting us, and keep sending us questions. I apologize to, I know David Barnes particularly, I think he might have gotten offended that I didn't respond so quickly because I've been rather busy. So I apologize for that. If you see this, David, I apologize. I'm going to try to work on that, although I did see a different video that I would probably recommend. It's much more worthwhile. I know people might want to hear my perspectives on the particular question that you asked. We'll try to see. But thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you all later. All right. If there's no comments or questions or anything, and of course, if there are any comments later when this is posted, I don't think I really said that much. But I think not 20 minutes worth. I didn't say 22 minutes worth. They used to say, give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world, right? So, I don't know if they're still around. 10 wins. All right. Well, thank you for watching. And I hope that we'll be able to work more on this idea. And that applies also not only to Muslims. I mean, obviously, Christians, Muslims, Jews have much more in common than many other religions. But we've seen a lot of Hindus coming into the Republican Party, Sikhs who are monotheists, so also have much in common with Christians, Muslims, and Jews, theologically and so forth. And there are many Christians within the pagan, neo-pagan world. Most neo-pagans are very liberal, left-wing, but there are others that are rather libertarian, that we can try to make a. I think he's turned his back a lot, but there's an example of the possibility of.
Continue straight onto Owego 55.
Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm almost to work. We'll have to continue this discussion later. All right, we'll see you. All right, first we'll get rid of this, and then we'll turn this off again, unless there's any comments or questions. All right, we'll see you later. God bless.